Okay, so in this video we're going to cover how to remount our models back onto our mountings. Obviously I have a maxillary model intact and it fits on here rather nicely with no issues. Just want to make sure that I'm at the right angle. And as you can see here, just having the model and the mounting sanded, when we're articulating this, it gives us a nice visual how things come back together. There's no play with the keyways at all. Everything is back together, so that looks good. The only thing I got to do now is put some separator on the back of this and squeeze everything together. In addition, I suggest that we put some mechanical retention with some plaster, if you recall, from a full upper and lower cases on the side here, to make sure nothing moves during equilibration. So I will add some separator. Just a generous amount right in the middle. And squeeze everything together. So you want to make sure that the underside of your model is completely free of any debris, of any separator that you used, or any separating medium that you used during your processing. Just wipe everything dry. So that looks pretty good. We'll leave this one off to the side so it dries a little bit. Now the lower, we have a bit of a challenge here because the lower model broke into two pieces, which is okay, during deflasking. So we want to verify this fit back onto the mounting, and it looks pretty clean. So all I got to do is make sure that I don't have any debris on the underside of the model. I don't have any debris in between the two broken pieces. So I'm just going to use the air nozzle just to blow things off, and that looks pretty good. I can certainly tag things together just a little bit with some separator here, but make sure that you don't get any separator on the underside now, because it will dry by the time you place it onto your mounting. So I got a little bit of separator that seeped through the top, a little bit on the bottom, so you want to quickly blow that off. And verify the fit back onto our mounting. So that looks pretty good too, and it feels very solid. So once again, we'll set that off to the side. Get a little bit of separator here and give it a good squeeze evenly all around, and you can see some of the excess separator coming through the sides there. And then we'll wipe that dry. I'll place this back on my articulator. Our pin reading should be at 0, although somebody might have used this separator, or this articulator I should say. So I'll put my pin back at 0. That's where it was before I processed the case, so hopefully there won't be any surprises in terms of the vertical dimension. And I'm gonna leave it like that. Now I did add some wax back here, a little overflow, and I can feel it interfering, and the pin is not exactly touching the incisal table, but it's a minor trim. Okay. So I'm gonna get a burr for that. What I'll do, I'll remove this again so it's a little easier to handle. And I'm gonna trim off the excess overhangs back here with my handpiece. And a little bit on this side. Okay. Let's try it back on the articulator and see if my pin is anywhere near the incisal table now. And I can clearly hear it, and certainly I can see that I have ample clearance now between the maxillary denture and the opposing model. So that looks pretty good. So we have to do some preliminary trimming with the soft liner here prior to trying to put it back on the model so we can verify our occlusion. So the best way to do it, I think, at least for me, is to use your big wheel here. Just make sure that it's secure. Now this wheel is pretty new and it's got sharp edges here, so I'm going to prep this wheel a little bit. And I'm going to use just a rough stone here and round off the corners a little bit, and almost giving it a bit of a convex shape to the leading edge. Like so, and then rounding off the corners. Okay, so with this wheel I'm going to do most of my reduction here. I'll get a nice angle. And I'm going to start from the outside and almost holding it at an angle. You want to use something that's very coarse and doesn't create a lot of heat to cut through the soft lining material. And as I'm doing so, I'm kind of pinching the soft liner material against the hard acrylic. Again, at an angle, just to create that smooth transition. And I'll turn it over in a second and I'll show you exactly what it looks like. So as you can see here, we have a very smooth transition now between the soft lining material and the hard acrylic. The only thing I got to do is just kind of incorporate some of the anatomy back onto the facial aspect here. So I'll work my way all the way across. So I'm holding it at a bit of a slant to make sure that I don't damage the teeth on the top. So I'm holding it on its side, so to speak. I'll do most of the reduction with this wheel. You can certainly go in there with a smaller wheel with your handpiece. There's also a special soft liner burr that you can use, but we'll get to that after we equilibrate the case and fine tune it a little bit. So back here, this is where your soft liner might be a little bit on the thin side, but I think I have ample material in here. But if you recall, I overbuild my wax up to ensure that I have hard acrylic on top of the soft acrylic to support it. Otherwise, if you don't have enough wax up here, if you didn't incorporate enough wax here, you'd be just on the soft acrylic, and that's not ideal. So this wheel works very well with the soft liner because it is very coarse, and you need something very coarse, not fine, to trim soft lining material. And because of it being very coarse, it doesn't create a lot of heat. So I'll clean it up as much as I can to be able to retrofit it back onto the model, and then we can finalize the trimming after the equilibration. Or you can certainly do it now. You can certainly finish all the trimming with the lower case before you retrofit it back onto your model. That's totally up to you. But just for the sake of the video, to keep things moving along, I'm just going to do whatever is necessary for me just to fit it back onto the cast. Make sure that we don't have any overhangs of the soft liner. And there's no projections on the underside or the tissue bearing side. That looks pretty good. Looks pretty clean. And that looks okay. Okay. Next, I'm going to take this lower denture and see how it fits against the lower cast. Take this off my model. Make sure that there's no residue of any stone. And obviously, we don't need to relieve any undercuts retrofitting this now because this is a soft lining material. It should slip into position rather nicely, just like that. And again, we have a nice emergence profile from our land area, utilizing the full effect of our impression and our border molding. Okay, so now the moment of truth. Let's see if there's any changes to the bite and the vertical dimension. Hopefully there isn't. So far so good. That looks pretty good. It looks like things are coming together simultaneously on either side. Take a look at it all the way around. And as far as the pin is concerned, it's slightly open. It's not exactly touching the incisal table, which is completely acceptable. Now, how much of an opening do we have? So if I loosen this pin, I have about 1 millimeter. So I might mill in the bite to about 0.5 millimeter. So that means I've opened the vertical dimension of occlusion about 0.5 millimeter as previously, which is okay if I leave it 0.5 millimeter. Okay, so I'm going to take some articulating paper. And once again, I'm just going to take just a thin strip and basically cut it in half. Just want that. And gently tap it all the way around. And we can see some of the high spots here. So I'm going to reduce some of the premature contacts with a small burr. And again, it's the same technique that we used for full upper and lower cases. So this is the issue you're going to have if you don't fasten your models to your mounting. They tend to come off. So the separator might work sometimes, but usually it's not sufficient. So we got to put some plaster putty on the side and some keyways on the side of the models and the mountings to ensure this doesn't move. So I got a little bit of separator residue in here. Okay, I'm just gonna reposition that with some separator. So if you recall from full dentures, we simply cut some keyways on the side of the models and we put some plaster putty here to keep everything together during the equilibration process. I'm not going to go through the whole equilibration process because we've seen this before during full upper and lower. Just going to loosen these up ever so slightly and see if we can pick up some more high spots here. And this is the beauty of having things on an articulator with an opposing bite versus just doing it in a jig, because the jig does not allow you to verify any discrepancies during processing, whereas the articulator does. And this will minimize any chair side adjustments when I call the client back for an insertion. So the bite feels very solid right now. Now in terms of how much